because people have got to know whether or not their president's a crook. Well, I'm not a crook.
Where did it come from, this hoity-toity attitude that our U.S. leaders were somehow above the law and the rules didn't apply to them? Well, maybe we should blame the king. Or perhaps sovereign immunity.
Sovereign immunity is basically just a legal concept that goes back hundreds of years during the time of monarchies that the king couldn't be sued.
Got to be the king.
That seems to be how a lot of government officials see themselves nowadays, and why not? They're almost immune from serious scrutiny and possible punishment. Subpoena Dick Cheney over what he knew about the leaking of the name of a CIA agent? Of course not. He's the vice president. Haul in Karl Rove about missing emails? Not while he was working in the White House. Sentence Scooter Libby to prison after his conviction? That got commuted. And it's not just the executives. Congress is just as bad. Democrats and Republicans alike. New York Democratic Representative Charles Rangel has been under scrutiny of late. First, for using a rent-stabilized Harlem apartment, which by law must be used as a primary residence, as a campaign office. Then, for soliciting money from businesses that have an interest in the committee he's leading. A direct conflict of interest. The money is for a new academic center in Harlem bearing his name. Imagine that. Republican critics call it Rangel's monument to me. Senator Ted Stevens is the longest-serving Republican senator, a figure in Alaska politics since before statehood. And now, he's the first sitting U.S. senator to face federal indictments since 1993. Stevens faces 7 felony counts of failing to disclose thousands of dollars in services he received from a company that helped renovate his own home. Oh, of course, Senator Stevens has pleaded not guilty to the charges. His trial begins this month. And, this may get you fired up. If he is convicted, he'll still receive his congressional pension. And as Craig Demchek reports, he's not the only one.
Congress passed a law last year banning lawmakers convicted of certain felonies from receiving a pension, but it includes only 11 types of felonies and leaves off many others, including income tax evasion.
Here we are in a situation where the very first time out of the box that this law applies, and it doesn't apply to Ted Stevens because this particular crime, committing false statements, doesn't count. It's not one of the crimes for which you'll lose your pension benefits.
And the law does not apply retroactively. Since 1980, 20 lawmakers have been convicted of serious crimes, but are still collecting government pensions, all paid for by you, the taxpayer.
When we get elected to Congress, we should be held to the highest standard. And I think that means that if you are convicted of a public integrity felony, you should not have a right to your pension.
Representative Mark Kirk has introduced legislation to close the loopholes. He's trying to broaden current law so that any federal lawmaker who commits a felony violating the public trust would not get to retire on the taxpayer's dime. Craig Demchek, American Crossroads.
It seems to be awful sad to be discussing federal lawmakers and felonies, but today's deficit of ethics seems to be stretching all the way from City Hall to the state capitals to the U.S. Congress. Salacious scandals have turned political headlines into tabloid material. For example, former presidential contender John Edwards' affair and possible love child. Elliot Spitzer caught in a prostitution ring. He was the governor of New York State. Congressman Foley paging his pages. And Senator Larry Craig's little latrine incident. You remember the toe-tapping tango. And then there are the classics. Rumors swirled around Marilyn Monroe's special relationship with the Kennedy brothers.
I did not have sexual relations with that woman.
And of course it was Bill Clinton who made Monica Lewinsky a household name. The president of conservative watchdog group Judicial Watch says we're now seeing the result of decades of indifference.
Everyone knows there's been scandal in Washington. Everyone knows there's corruption in Washington. And there's been a buildup because the laws haven't been enforced, the ethics rules haven't been enforced for years and years.